Hello. Today we're going to look at the grammar for Q Skills 3 Listening and Speaking Unit 5. And the name of the grammar we're going to look at today is called the past perfect. This is what we're going to study together, but first we're going to start with a very important review. The three forms of verbs, the infinitive or the first form, the past simple or the second form, and the past participle or the third form. This is the one you're really going to need. Then we're going to look at how do we form the past perfect. We're going to answer the question, when do we use the past perfect? We're going to look at some time expressions we use in the past perfect. So for example, before, after. Then I'm going to ask you to practice by recognizing the past perfect in sentences. Again, I'm going to ask you to practice. Over to you means time to practice. I'm going to ask you here which activity in the past was the first one. Then, again, practice. I'm going to ask you to put the verbs in the correct form. Then we're going to look at the books. You will need to open your books on page 104, 105 and 106 to do some exercises. And finally, I'm asking you to go to the LMS and look at Unit 5. So, are you ready to go? Right, now we're going to start with the important review. Let's take a look. The three forms of verbs are the infinitive, the past simple and the past participle. The infinitive are the verbs that are the base form, so be in this case, or to be, which is the first one here. The past simple is was or were, or began, or came, and this is the one that we use when we're talking simply about the past. And the past participle is the third form. These are the ones that you're going to need if you're going to use the past perfect correctly. So to use the past perfect correctly, you need to learn the third forms of each verb. So these in this list. You put the word had before the third form of the verb. So if we've got done, we put the word had before it. So had done. Let's take a look at some examples. Had seen, had given, had gone, had drunk. So how do we form the past perfect? Let's take a look. We use the verb have in the past. Now, what's the past of have? Correct, had. And after that, we put what? Can you remember from the previous slide? We put the third form of any verb. So it's had and then the third form. Let's take a look at some examples. He had worked in Spain before he came to Saudi Arabia. So the past perfect is he had and then the third form. Let's have a look at another example. He hadn't seen the news until he got home. Now let's take a look at a couple more examples. My father had lived in London before he was married. I had been to Africa 3 times by the time I was 21. Had worked, hadn't seen, had lived, had been are the forms of the past perfect. And worked, seen, lived and been are the third forms of the verb. Now, that's the structure, but the question really is, when do we use it? Well, we use it when there are 2 or more actions in the past. So the past is talking about the past, and there are 2 or more actions. And the past perfect describes the earliest of 2 or more. So let's have a look at this example. When we arrived, the film had started. Basically, it means this is the action that happened first, and then this is the second one. So, first the film started, then we arrived. Let's have a look at another example. We usually use the past perfect to make it clear which action happened first. For example, it had snowed in the night, so the bus didn't arrive. It had snowed in the night, and after that, the bus didn't arrive. This is what happened first. This is the earliest of two or more actions in the past. Now, the past perfect also tells us how long an action continued up to the point in the past. Now, that sounds a bit complicated, but let's have a look at an example. When he graduated, he had been in London for 6 years. This is the activity that he was doing before he graduated. It's the earliest of two or more actions in the past. So I know this sounds a little complicated, but here's my tip. Always think of which action happened first in the past. And that one you put in this form, had, and the third form of the verb. Now let's have a look at some more examples. I hope that you're finding this okay. Soon you're going to practice, so don't worry. Okay, we use some time expressions in the past, so words like when, before, by the time, until, and after. For example, let's have a look at some ideas. When my friends arrived, I had already cooked dinner. Which one happened first? Cooked dinner or my friends arrived? I cooked dinner. That's the one that happened first. We put that in the past participle. Sorry, in the past perfect. Before my friends arrived, I had been shopping. By the time my friends arrived, I had cleaned the house. We didn't sleep until my friends had gone home, and after my friends had left, I went to bed. Again, a tip. Always put the earliest action in the past perfect. What I'd like you to do is pause this video, look at these examples, and just make sure you understand that this is the earliest action in the past. Now, I'm going to ask you to look at some sentences and recognize the past perfect. So are you ready? Which of these verbs in these sentences are in the past perfect? In other words, which action happened first? Here we go. Pause the video and then we will look at the answers. So for example, in the first one, I had never seen such a beautiful sunset before I went to bed. Which action happened first? I went or I had never seen? Okay, pause the video and we will look at the answers. Okay, here goes. These are the answers. Did you get the same? Okay, if you got some of these wrong, don't worry, because now we're going to practice even more. So it's over to you again. I would like you to put the verbs in brackets into the correct form, the past simple or the past perfect. Remember, there are two actions or more in the past. The earliest one is in the past perfect. So let's take a look. So for example, we had already eaten when John, is it had come or came home? Let's have a look at another one. When I, is it had got or got to the airport, I discovered I had forgotten my passport. I'd like you to pause the video and choose the correct answer. The past simple of the verbs, so these are the verbs, or the past perfect. Okay, then let's check the answers. We had already eaten when John came home. So John came home, but before that we had already eaten. I'll just give you two more examples. When I got to the airport, I discovered I had forgotten my passport. I had forgotten my passport before I got to the airport. So this is the earliest action. And one more. I opened my wallet to find that I had forgotten my credit card. I opened my wallet, but before that I had forgotten my credit card. Now this is getting easier, isn't it? Now then, we're almost finished. I'd like you to open your books at page 104, and we're going to do an exercise on page 104 and 105 and another one on 106. So, are you ready? And after this, we're going to go to the LMS Unit 5 and do the grammar exercises. Okay, let's go to the book. On this page, this is page 106, so we need to go back 2 pages. What you will find is an explanation of the past perfect, which we've talked about, and I would like you to do this exercise at the bottom. Read the pairs of sentences, so you have one sentence and a second sentence, one sentence and a second sentence. What I want you to do is to write 1 next to the sentence that happened first, and write 2 next to the sentence that happened second. But you need to use these words in brackets to join the sentences together. So for example, the scientist retired. He began research on a new area of interest. Did he retire first, or did he begin research first? The scientist had retired before he began research on a new area of interest. This is the thing that he did second. And this is the thing that he did first. What I'd like you to do is to do all of these sentences, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So pause the video and do these sentences now. Finally, in this book, I'd like you to look at page 106. You know that you use had and the third form of the verb, but you can also write the apostrophe, I'd, or he'd, or we'd, or you'd, or she'd, except in questions. And the contraction in negatives is hadn't. Okay. The last exercise today, I'm going to ask you to go to your listening and speaking book. I'd like you to go to Unit 5. And you do this by clicking on Practice, Unit 5. And I'd like you to do the grammar exercise here, the past perfect. What you need to do is reorder the sets of words to make a sentence in the past perfect. So for example, we have until, about the accident. I hadn't known, I heard the news. What you need to do is to move these around to find the answers. And I think that's the right one. But do you agree? Okay, let's check. I hadn't known about the accident until I heard the news. Can you do exercise 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, please? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for watching and listening.